Something happened to me when I was very young, only 9 years old. It was 1914, the summer after my brother Dan died. A man in his 90s should be well past the terrors of childhood, but as my infirmity slowly crept up on me, that terrible face grows clearer and clearer in my mind's eye. The face of the man in the black suit grows ever clearer, ever closer, and I remember every word he said. For as long as I can remember, I've been told seemingly unreal horror stories from my family's past. These tales hold a special place in my heart because I know the people telling them to me are being honest and showing a side of themselves they don't always show. Author Stephen King writes of an old man who shares his own terrifying story from his youth. This is The Man in the Black Suit by Stephen King. This thing I'm telling about happened on a Saturday. My father gave me a whole list of chores to do, including some that would have been Dan's if he'd still been alive. He was my only brother. He died of being stung by a bee. Dad said I could go fishing if I didn't mind going by myself. But don't go too far in the woods, he told me. Not beyond where it splits. No, sir. I promise. I walked along the bank, following the current, and wet my line for the first time with the bridge until inside of the stream. Now, there was a pleasant flat space here, and almost immediately I snagged a fine rainbow trout. I leaned back, looking up, when I dozed off, or maybe slept. I don't know for sure. All I know is suddenly I became aware that something was sitting on the tip of my nose. I crossed my eyes and I saw a bee. My heart seemed to fall dead in my chest. For a horrible second, I thought I was going to wet my pants. A terrible idea came to me, but this was the very bee that killed my brother. A special bee. As I sat there, trembling on the edge of panic, there came a report behind me, and it was someone clapping his hands. One single clap. At the moment it came, the bee tumbled off my nose and fell into my lap. It was dead as a doornail. I looked over my shoulder to see a man who clapped. A man was standing above me at the edge of the trees. His face was long and pale. His black hair was combed tight against his skull and parted with rigorous care on the left side of his narrow head. He was very tall. He was wearing a black three-piece suit, and I knew right away he was not a human being. Because his eyes were the orangey red flames of a wood stove. I don't mean just the irises, because he had no irises and no pupils and certainly no whites. My bladder let go. Why, it's a Fisher boy! All I could think was that maybe he would let me go if I pretended not to see what he was, if I pretended I didn't see where there were flames glowing and dancing where his eyes should have been. I've saved you a nasty sting, perhaps, he said. And then to my horror, he came down to the bank to where I sat with a dead bee in my wet lap. Even before he reached me, I recognized the aroma baking from the skin under the suit, the smell of burned matches, the smell of sulfur. The man in the black suit was the devil. I thought about running, but my legs seemed 2 countries away from my brain. I suddenly knew that I was going to die, and probably painfully, but the worst part of it was that might not be the worst of it. The worst of it would come later after I died. Sad news, Fisher boy, he said. I've come with some sad news. Your mother is dead. No, I cried. No, you lie! He smiled, the sadly patient smile of a man who had often been accused falsely. I'm afraid not, he said. It was the same thing that happened to your brother Gary. It was a bee. No, that's not true. You're a lying bastard. I had called the devil a lying bastard. On some level, I was aware of this, but the entire front of my mind was taken up by the enormity of what he'd said. Less than an hour ago, actually, one flew in through the kitchen window. She felt her throat start to close up at once. That's what happens, you know. When someone's allergic to bee venom, their throats close in the open air. That's why Dan's face was so swollen and purple. That's why your father covered it with his shirt. She made the most wonderfully awful noises, the man in the black suit said reflectively. And she scratched her face quite badly, I'm afraid. Her eyes bulged out like a frog's eyes. She wept. He looked out at the stream for a moment, his face sad and thoughtful. I'm starving, he said abruptly. I'm going to kill you and rear you open and eat your guts, little fisher boy. What do you think about that? He reached for me with his long, pale hands without thinking about what I was doing. I flipped open the top of my creel and brought out the monster brookie I'd caught earlier. Big fish, the man in the black suit cried in a guttural, greedy voice. Oh, big fish! He snatched it away from me and crammed it into a mouth that opened wider than any human mouth ever could. I bolted to my feet and fled up the bank. He was coming after me. The tail of the fish was still protruding from his mouth, and I could smell the rest of it roasting out of his oven throat. Bishop boy, he snarled. You gotta get away from me, Bishop boy. It takes more than a mouthful of trout to fill me up. But he was gone. Until that Saturday in 1914, I thought that bears were the worst thing the forest could hold. Now I knew better. I remember the meals I ate, the games I played, the girls I kissed. Yet of all the memories, the one of the man in the black suit is the strongest. He was real. He was the devil. And that day, I was either his errand or his luck. The devil came to me once long ago. Suppose he were to come again.